mentoring
Very
coaches,
good.
but also then at my private practice of coaching individuals. And in my story, I actually, when I left school, I wasn't so clear on what I wanted to do. And my father was a busy man. He had a farm. It was a busy family farm. So to come home, so the next thing I knew, I was full-time farming. And I did that for about 10 years, from till about the very late 20s, and enjoyed it, but perhaps a little bit restricted. And then I felt, that I wasn't really, I wasn't really getting to express myself. I realized
Very good.
Be more of a people person. So next thing I knew, I was starting to follow my intuition, and it ended up on a self-development seminar, which included a fire walk where I walked over, the hot coals. I didn't burn my feet. So I was kind of fascinated by this whole process. And I'd learned that the speaker was using something called NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. So I was fascinated by this power of the mind over matter. And so I sought out a trainer, and I found an NLP practitioner training, jumped in, trained, and immediately started seeing clients and getting results. And then that led me on a journey of, it was kind of an intuitive journey of following the next step. So I trained at the highest level in NLP. I trained two of the co-founders of NLP around the world. And then later I realized I had a lot of skills in the mindset, but I realized that, I have to look after the body too. And sometimes it's a combination of both. So that led me to study nutritional therapy for 4 years. And then interesting, when I was studying with the college, they were interested in NLP, because if you don't know anything about NLP or Neuro Linguistic Programming, it's really all about creating change. And if you ever know anything about nutrition, most of us already know what to do to eat better or to be healthier, but we don't do it. So I was brought in to train their students in NLP and kind of professional communication, to help them get better at creating the changes and not just giving advice, but helping them helping their clients integrate the knowledge they were learning and basically to eat better, not just know how to eat better. Then I was fast tracked to become their health and wellness coach trainer. And I've been training coaches since, and I developed my own practice. And now my is a kind of a mix of half and half between private practice, individual clients, and training groups of coaches. So yeah, and in that I specialize in coaching, and there's a few different areas I coach. I mentor coaches, but I also I'm used to training, working with busy professionals.
Very good.
High stress, high pressure, and a lot of demands, a lot of responsibilities, especially when perhaps there's a young family involved or responsibilities in the home combined with the workplace. And I help work them to really get a grasp on the stressors, equip them and empower them with techniques and the know-how to get it under control, and then perhaps good boundaries and standing up for themselves sometimes to make sure that they can carve out their me time, good structured work-life balance. So that's an area I'm familiar with as well. Your audience might know a little bit too well.
Very good. So you grew up in a family farm. What were you like as a child?
So there was 5 in my family. The biggest influence on me was my older brother, who was bigger. He was 15 months older.
Very good.
He was bigger, faster, stronger, and more dominant. So I was a shy kid, and I kind of was in his shadow, kind of growing up. So I was probably a sensitive kid and pretty shy, but curious. I was always very curious. I think I was a good observer of life, and I used to be a good questioner, and I'd see things that wouldn't stack up, and I'd ask good questions, and I didn't always get the answers. So it led to this, a real curiosity and a desire to learn and to go deeper. Sometimes the surface level answers I got didn't really stack up. So I like to go deeper to get into the deeper knowledge.
Did you play any sports? Have any activities?
Yeah. So when I went to boarding school in Dublin, we were farming, so we moved from Cavan to Mullingar, and then I moved to boarding school, and I played rugby in school, and when I came home to Mullingar, I played then at an amateur level until about my late 20s, when my body started to disagree with the ongoing what do you call it, injuries and impacts I was receiving. But I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah.
I think overall, there's very, very few players, amateur or professional, who get out of rugby as a career without having sustained some injuries along the way. And I think in the modern game, a lot of injuries are to shoulders and necks.
It's incredible. Looking at, sorry, John, did I interrupt?
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
No, when you see the modern, it seems to have gotten more intense since I stopped, and the impacts now are getting severe. And it's played it as the professionalism came in when I was about 20, I think. So you just see how it's got more intense and more demands on the body and the mind and the overall commitment, I suppose. But it was a really good social sport. And my friends now are still the ones I used to play rugby with and hang out with.
Oh, very good. But I know people like Sam Warburton, the ex-Wales open side flanker. He's like the bionic man. He has so many injuries. I think that number 7 position is one of the positions where they do get a lot of injuries because they're juggling for the ball. They're putting their heads and necks and backs in quite a dangerous position, I suppose you could say. Yeah. I also think that centres are very prone to injury. So a player like Brennan Driscoll, he was very well managed over the years. Indeed. Shane, describe for the audience your top 5 tips for managing stress.
Okay, so that's a good question. The top 5 tips. One I'll throw in there is we're not always aware of the impact that our diet can have on stress.
True.
So our diet actually we can create what's called a blood sugar imbalance. And that means we just have kind of spikes of energy and then a trough. And that's very stressful on the body. It actually creates the stress hormones. So one of the easiest ways when I'm working with someone on stress, if we identify that, we can quite easily strategically eliminate the imbalance. And that restores this gentler, much more consistent energy through the day. And that makes it easier then to get other behaviors, and it kind of cuts out this unnecessary stress. So blood sugar balance is the theme. I don't have enough time to go into it now through diet. The second one would be, I now call it presence. Some people would call it mindfulness. Some people would call it just maybe kind of a moving meditation. It's really just when we get out of our heads and come more into our bodies. A lot of time when we're stressed, we're thinking, and we have voices going on. And it's something very settling when we kind of we start to feel our toes. Maybe take a deep breath into our belly.
Very good.
And just slow things down. It slows down our thoughts. And also then we kind of reassuring to the body. It's like, the body goes, daddy's home. There's a presence back in the body. And that automatically generates this kind of sense of ease or reassurance in the body. Third tip would be breathing. Think of your breath as how you fuel the engine of your body, So stress tends to, when we're stressed, we tend to go to the breath of shallow breaths up high. So it's if our exhales are longer than our inhale, that the little nodes in our heart, there's little detectors in our heart, and they detect that, and they go, so when the the exhale is longer than the inhale, it tells the body to return to what's called parasympathetic nervous system arousal, which means rest and digest. So there's two arms of the nervous system. There's fight or flight, which we call stress. The other one is rest and digest, and that's the counter to stress. And we can initiate that. We can really hack into the body's system, the nervous system, through the breath. So controlling the breath, specifically deep diaphragmatic breaths or long exhales. You asked for 5. Another thing would be, so when we want to protect sleep, we have young kids in the house here, so you don't know what it's like for you. But if you have interruption to sleep, and sleep often is the enemy of good sleep. So if sleep starts to get impacted, sleep quality deteriorates. What happens is we become more vulnerable to stress the following day, less resilient to it, and we're kind of setting ourselves up for this. We're more prone to stress. We can't handle as much stress, and that's stressful in itself, because we're now anticipating that we won't be able to deal with whatever's there. So sleep hygiene, and then, like I said before, the fifth one, I suppose the final one, would be getting it out of your head. So a lot of the time the stress goes round and round, and like a washing machine, churning, and there's thoughts and worries and concerns. So getting it out of your head. Now, one way would be to speak to someone. But they have to be a good listener, and not everybody's equipped for that. But if you have a good listener, and it's probably more challenging for men than women, but finding someone who's good at listening and just being able to just process and talk it through. The alternative to that would be to writing it down. So a simple hack there I would do, I think perhaps early in a stress management process with someone, would be to just before they go to retire at night, to bed or whatever, just write out whatever's in their head. If they're into more exploration, perhaps they'll have some concerns to journal on it, or to kind of get it out of the head onto paper. That usually, once it's out of your head and onto paper, it usually feels more tangible and less believable. So there's 5. I hope they're useful. Anything? Any questions on those 5? Are they all clear?
I like the idea about the washing machine spinning around and around, where people have thoughts in their minds, and they're catastrophizing, and they're thinking of the very worst outcome that could happen, rather than thinking of the mean outcome or the ideal outcome. And then they create more and more thoughts in their head that are negative, and they create more and more stress for themselves. That's a good idea, a good analogy, I think, indeed. Yeah.
And John, just on that point, is that it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Like you just said there. So any of those things, we just interrupt that pattern, because we can spiral so easily. And another thing I'd like to say is that you cannot trust a stressed mind, because there's stressed mind, stressed thoughts, and like you say, it leads to catastrophizing the worst possible situation, and we get more stress, and it leads to more stressful thoughts. So anything at all could hack that, interrupt the program, and do something different that's useful.
I also like the idea of journaling, because you can get your thoughts out of your head and get them down on paper, and then people put a structure around that thought. It just doesn't, initially it might be a bit unwieldy or a bit unstructured, but when they think about it and they put it in paper, they gain clarity over that. And doing that at nighttime helps the person to get a better night's sleep. And I think that's important. Because as you said there a minute ago, a poor quality sleep is a contributory factor to increased stress for people. Yeah.
What I didn't mention was that on the plus side, if you improve sleep, it's the biggest insulator against stress. So good night's sleep is like the tonic, and we suddenly go, things aren't that bad. So I like to work on getting that sleep, and I'm getting the good night's sleep, and then everything else you're trying becomes more manageable, more doable.
Indeed. And the next question is about nutrition, which we've talked about very briefly in managing stress. So explain why nutrition plays an important part in helping to develop a healthy lifestyle.
Okay, so I suppose I'm kind of biased in terms of behavior, so I'm always thinking of that. I know how hard it can be, to keep on top of good nutrition. So I mentioned that theme of blood sugar balance, and
very good.
Really what I mean there is that if we eat the wrong foods, and they tend to be what we go for when we're stressed, which are kind of caffeine would be one, so coffee, and then sweet things. So the foods that get converted to sugar in our blood quickly, they cause this blood sugar spike, which feels pretty good, and it's like, ooh, there's kind of a bit of a high in it in the short term. However, the body does, sugars are too high here, and are constantly monitoring the concentration of sugar in the blood. If it gets too much, it's really dangerous. So it has these mechanisms to bring it down. And how it does that, it releases a hormone called insulin related to pre-diabetes and diabetes. And that takes, it's basically, it says to the body, hey, too much sugar in the blood, get it out. So it opens up the gates and pulls extra sugar out of the blood cells, out of the blood flow, and stashes it in the cells. And that's where our main cause of weight gain or fat gain is, because later that sugar becomes glucose and then fat. So then, but after that, if we're not careful, the blood sugar levels go down too much, and then we get the hunger, we get the cravings, because the brain needs a consistent supply of energy. And this is why I'm going to talk about blood sugar balance. And if this gets low, we get cranky, we get irritable, we get memory problems, we get a little bit more angry, a little bit intolerant. People around you will know this. And we also then crave the exact foods that cause it in the first place. So we're like, well, give me sugar and give it to me now. So we'll look for the biscuits, we'll look for the toast and the jam, we'll look for another coffee, we'll look for a can of Coke, or we'll look for a Mars bar, something like that. And the stress, by the time we're aware of that, we don't want to sit and prepare a good meal. So and if we miss that, and if we don't fall to the cravings and start to write again, we get this crash. And to get us out of that, the body releases the stress hormones to lift the sugars again. So your adrenaline and your cortisol, your main stress hormones, are released to bring the blood sugar levels up. But that's more stress, and that leads to more stressful thinking, and it feels like more stress in the body. So to get rid of all that, it's simple. We want to eat either little and often. We really want to get rid of the high sugary snacks. So there was something called your quick carbs, or your fast carbs. So carbohydrates like your white bread, your white pasta, your white rice, your potatoes, all the sugary stuff, all the highly processed stuff. And you just bring in more natural foods or higher protein sources, whole foods, nuts, seeds, and they're slower release. And what they do is then you get this consistent flow of energy through the day. Your brain doesn't have to struggle with these highs and lows, and you start to perform way better, and you start to feel better. And then you start to make better choices because you're not fighting these highs and lows. Now, that's quite a lot compacted in there. I want to just check how that all that land.
That's very clear to me anyway, because I was one of those persons when I lived in the UK, to be honest, who had these food cravings for processed food, an energy boost there and then. And then afterwards, you were tired. But now I prefer my porridge in the morning. I prefer brown bread.
Yes.
My peppers, my tomatoes for lunch. Salads, the healthy foods. In addition to that, I take a lot more exercise now than I did 20 years ago, and I feel the benefit for it. So I think it's a case of having a good balanced diet, having porridge or Weetabix, eating plenty of greens and salads, and having a range of white meat, some red meat, and some fish also in the diet for protein. Not to eat too much red meat, I think is important also. And that contributes to a healthy, balanced lifestyle. I set myself a goal of having a maximum of 2 biscuits a day, nothing more than that.
Okay.
So.
And you noticed that the shift in the energy, did you?
I do, yes. Yeah. And the weight loss. That's another day's story.
I like to make, and like everything you said there, porridge, the shifting. So maybe you just go from a cereal or a toast to porridge, your brown bread instead of white bread. It's one of those things that with meal swaps and just swapping certain foods, we can make very big changes, dramatic changes with little input. And it's a good foundation then to make some of the harder changes. Yeah. So well done.
I also find that I prefer outdoor exercise to going to the gym. I find when you're at a gym, they tend to be crowded. There's plenty of people around you. You don't have much time in any one particular machine or weight. There's always people in a rush behind you. When you're out there, you're in your own space. You can clear your head of any negative thoughts you have.
Yeah.
Exercise also helps to re-energize the body and get the energy levels up.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. Based on your experience, Shane, what advice would you have for a person who's considering changing their career direction and starting their own business?
Okay, so I suppose a lot of it is about timing. Not be afraid of it. You know, we can think about it for the rest of our lives and never make the change.
True.
But if that already thinking about it, you know, what's going on there? There's something kind of, there's something inside them, maybe pushing them. Maybe I should leave. A lot of time we're perhaps in a situation or job that we're not that happy with, but it's certain. It's certainty, and it's usually the certainty that keeps us kind of locked in, or feeling is like we can't change. And it will. So what stops us from stepping out of that is the uncertainty of what if. True. So you really got what will really help is building this trust, and it's a trust in yourself. So how do you build that trust? And it's a great thing is really reflecting back over, you know, choices you've made in the past. Maybe not always logical ones. I'm big into, you know, following your gut, and just kind of building up this trust. You know, yeah, you do make good choices. You have made good choices, and start to really get clear on your strengths. What is it that you know that's trying to get out of you? You know, if you want to set up your own business, if you have a calling maybe to make this change, you know, what's in there? What potential is it that's in there that's just kind of going, you know, let me out of here? It's like you have it in a box. And as you build up this trust in yourself and focus on your strengths and grow that confidence, then you start to get to this point where, yeah, you know, why not? And then it really is about putting a time on it. Okay, right. You know, it could be put it a year, the 1st of December, or maybe there's a milestone, your 50th birthday, or and you just go, right, by then I'm going to be prepared. And then going to have to make it comfortable, right? You're going to have some resilience. So starting any uncertainty, you may not be getting your cash flow straight away. So have some kind of something in some kind of reason. You have some a part-time job to tide you over until your new business is substantial enough to give you all the income you need and all of the certainty you need. And I'm a big fan of you know, trusting your gut. And I'll talk about that. You know, it's quite a cliched thing, you know, follow your heart, go with your gut. But I've built up this massive trust in I call it your inner authority. We all have one, and nobody else teaches you this. Not nobody else, but we all often go to experts or consultants. And I'm kind of trying to coach people to find that inner authority. And when you build trust in that, it will know when you're ready. You may be ready now, or you may have to do a bit more preparation. But when you're ready, you know, and then it'll feel painful to stay where you are. And you'll suffer until you make that change. And then the floodgates open and wow, you're ready to really shine.
I know what you're saying here, and this is quite a difficult conversation for a lot of people, you know, who may be in their mid-40s to early 50s, mortgage, they might have children in university, and their thoughts that are going through their head are, I'm not very happy in my job. I'd love to start my own business. But the big dilemma is they have costs to meet, and the job gives them a certainty in terms of their salary each month. If they start a business, there's no certain income for quite a while, and they have to invest in the business to get the branding done, to build their intellectual property. So they have additional outgoings on top of their, you know, mortgage or university fees for kids or whatever the case may be. And that's a big negative thought in their head. But as you have mentioned there, people have to trust their intuition, go with their gut feeling before it's too late. And it's better to make the choice yourself to leave a job than to be told you're being made redundant. Go now.
Go on your own terms,
And go on your own terms. And make sure that people get their research done before they launch any business, that they know what exactly their ideal client is, what that person's pain point is, and how they can help their ideal client to solve a problem. And they can get all that research done before they leave the job. Big step forward, I think, in my own opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And what I would say also is, and it's getting ahead of it. It's like we often build up as I have to do this, and it's like a point in the time, and then it all changes. You can much more gradual. Start thinking about it and then talking about it. Find people who have already done it. Someone who's and they will share so much of their wisdom with you. And it's not your wisdom, but it can be really helpful and it can be inspiring. And it can also add they will be honest and it will add the caution. Yeah. What are your blind spots? And then perhaps build up, kind of get into this preparation mode. So the change, you can make the decision. Now I'm doing it. I'm not ready yet. And in coaching, we call it the readiness to change. So you're in the preparation stage. So you're preparing to leave.
Very good.
You'll have your income, but you're already building your dream career. And you don't have to make that final jump and let go of the security until you're ready. And if you feel that someone's going to make the decision for you, you can get ahead of that, of course. But yeah, don't be afraid to start and talking, learning, researching, and taking action. That's very good for your confidence about showing up for yourself in some way for your dreams.
Yeah. In terms of the Myers-Briggs personality type, would you be intuition as against a sensory person?
Yeah, I am the INFP. Intuitive and perceiver more than a. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't studied. I have done my own time with several times, but that's not part of my coaching.
Yeah.
The sensor is, what's the other one? Is the sensor and
sensory and intuition is one.
Okay.
Introversion is against extroversion.
Okay.
Judging against perceiving, and then there's thinking against feeling.
Okay. So I'm the feeler and the perceiver, the intuitive, and the sensor versus
sensory against intuition.
Oh, yeah, intuitive.
Extroversion against introversion.
Introverted.
Yeah, I'm mildly on the introversion side. I'm a good way along the intuitive spectrum. And I'm a P. I'm off the wall perceiving. I'm right over on the right-hand side. You can't go any further. If you did, you'd fall off the edge of the cliff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then the only difference between your profile and mine is I'm a T for thinking instead of feeling person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the second person that I know, apart from myself, who's a P from the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Most people I know are more into the to-do lists and structure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The word structure sends a chill down my spine.
It used to be mine, and then I realized that I suppose in coaching, you look for you want to work on your strengths, but then you want to be aware of your weaknesses. And structure is, I had a kind of a healing around structure because I used to dread it because it didn't come naturally. And now I look for it and I find any good structure and I work on it because it gives your creative side something more. It makes it easier for your creative side to express itself. Without the structure, we tend to just have the best ideas in the world, best intentions, and not really follow through. That's my experience anyway. So the structure helps me with that implementing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what happens with a lot of businesses when they talk about structure, it's all around who reports to who and and who's reporting to you. So unless I can see the bigger picture in a job, I tend to become very frustrated very quickly. And that's why I love working for myself, because like yourself, I can engage my more creative side. Obviously, I need some structure around my business, to keep on top of my accounts and tax affairs and small things like that can trip you up. But when they talk about structure in a business context, it's more around, layers of management and staff and who's going to report to who, and that just sends a chill down my spine.
I'm not a huge fan of that. Like I know from coaching how I think and that robs creativity.
It does
when it's overly done, and this is where I think there's been a lot of changes, and it comes from the top down, and it adds layers and layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy, and it really can stifle creativity because it's all about ticking boxes and reporting to someone and getting this stuff done. And I have a problem with that because it often robs individuals of their individual brilliance and their individual creativity if they're trusted and left to their own devices. But I'm not speaking for the corporations here. I'm speaking for the individual.
Correct. I agree with you in that regard. I just found that there were jobs where you were just merely ticking a box. There was no creativity involved. And I just couldn't wait to get out of those jobs, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I wouldn't
tell the audience why spirituality is important for wellness.
Well, raison d'etre, why are we here? If I'm a questioner, so there's a quote from a beautiful book, Man's Search for Meaning, very powerful book, short book, written by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. I don't know if you know the book, but he observed that, people, he saw people at the most challenging, you cannot imagine the challenges that he saw people and went through himself. And he saw people going out to the depths of depravity in kind of as a human being, but he also saw people under the greatest challenge you could ever imagine, rising up and somehow being acting in powerfully humane ways and courageous ways for the benefit of others. And some of the people survived on ungodly terrors, and a lot didn't. But the ones he noticed that survived and were able to last the longest in those horrible conditions were the ones who had a purpose, one who had a meaning for life. So for me, spirituality is really about when if we all, in my book, we're all different, and we all here for our own unique reason. I have no clue what you're here for, Sean. I'm still trying to figure out mine. But when we tap into that, why we're here, what's my meaning, what's my purpose, that gives us, to go back to Viktor Frankl's quote. He said that a strong why will get you through almost anyhow. So that reason, the reason to live, a reason to be here, to push through, that brings incredible resilience. And it gets us up out in the morning, and we have motivation and to tackle the day, not just the easy days, but the tough days, to get through the challenges. So spirituality for me is linked to that inner sense of, what am I here for? And this kind of something bigger than me. I'm a tiny speck in this ocean, right. But I'm here for a reason, and I'm bringing something. What is it I bring? And we kind of tune into that. We want to contribute to the world. What is it do you want? What impact do you want to make? What do you want to be known for? What legacy do you want to leave behind? What kind of role model do you want to be? That's powerful because it's not just about you. It's about others. And when we tap into that, then it gives us this really strong resilience and ability to push through the mundane and the hard days and not be as affected by it.
Very good answer to a question like that. A lot of people find it very hard to talk about their spiritual side, to be honest.
Well, it's a hard term. It means lots of different things to lots of different people. Yeah, I like to kind of link it back to the meaning and purpose because it's kind of connected in my book.
Very good.
Whatever your understanding of it is.
Yeah. Describe for the audience what releasing is and why we should do it.
Okay, so releasing is a technique that I've in my coaching and NLP days. I've had various techniques over the years, and releasing has become my favorite. It's what I use whenever we have a negative emotion. So there's something, a problem we have, a challenge we have. We may be aware of the thoughts about it, but generally anything that hasn't gone away, that sticks around, will have an energetic charge, will have it will show up in the body. Very good. Releasing involves first really becoming present in the body. And perhaps we're talking about something, we can just kind of come into the body, and we notice that the story we're telling ourselves has feelings and will have emotions, but also that emotion will be showing up as a physical sensation in the body. So we talk about stress, anxiety. It sounds like it's something, but you can't find it, can you? Just try and find stress. It's not really a thing. It sounds like a thing. It's called a normalization in linguistics. So stress showing up in the body is usually an emotional charge. So what we do is we locate that charge in the body, a physical sensation, often perhaps a tightness in the chest or butterflies in the tummy, whatever it is. And then releasing involves us being present with it. And really, it's very simple. We have a simple statement that once we identify it, we say, "I see you," to the trapped energy. "I accept you," and we stay focused on it, and it actually starts to unwind, and then eventually we'll just release out of the body. Interesting thing is, once the physical sensation that has been caught in the body is released, the thoughts that were attached to it, the story that was attached to it, or even the belief that was attached to it, and the recurring negative emotion no longer is re-stimulated. So the triggers that we get triggered by something, we feel it, we maybe think about it, but then when we release energetically, then the trigger doesn't have the same impact, because it doesn't have the same charge to be stimulated. So there's a technique I have, if anyone's interested in it, I have a tutorial on my website. I combine it with presence first. So then you can go to my website and I guide you through one for anxiety. How does that land with you, John? I'm not sure how will I explain that.
That's a very good answer. So well explained. Thank you for that.
Just the bottom line, it's probably an energy medicine technique, if you've ever heard of that.
Indeed. Okay. And one final question for you, Shane. What does success mean for you in your business?
Great question. What does success mean for me in my business? I suppose every time I interact with someone, I'm trying to create a positive impact. And when I'm coaching people for a longer term, I get to really know what that impact I'm trying to create is. So having a positive impact on the people I work with. Now, that can be great. When I started out, I didn't really care about money. It was much more of a purpose in my life. But then I realized I wasn't going to be very successful in business unless there was a monetary element. So it's for success for me is where I'm reaching a lot of people. I'm creating a lot of impact, positive impact, and creating positive change that lasts, not lasting positive change, and that's highly valuable to the client, and that I'm well rewarded for it financially, so that my own needs are met.
Thank you for that answer there, Shane. And 3 remarkable things I can take away from today's episode of the show is, firstly, be very careful in terms of nutrition. Make sure you avoid eating too much processed foods, sugary foods, fatty foods, and concentrate on good nutrition: brown bread, porridge, salads, greens, peppers, and having a balance between white meat, fish, and red meat, and also limit alcohol consumption. And in addition to that, also to take regular exercise. I also liked Shane's analogy about spiritual beings. We're all different in this world, and we're all good at something. It's a matter of identifying what that something is, and then developing it and commercializing it. And then finally, in terms of people who might be unhappy in their job, go with your gut feeling if you're considering starting your own business. But before you go from employment to self-employment, make a head start, get yourself a coach, identify what services you can give people, how you can help people to overcome a pain point in their life and to make their lives better and more effective. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before I let you go?
So just in my own journey, I took that intuitive step out of the certainty of the farming background. And with a big farm, there was a certain life, the certainty and life that was laid out for me. I didn't know all the steps. I had no idea I was going to end up here. I didn't have that clear vision, but intuitively I knew what the next step was. So the metaphor here is the stepping stones. I don't know if you remember in the old days, they had stepping stones just under the water, and you can see perhaps one or two in front of you. You just take a step onto one, and you know, once your weight goes on that one, you're kind of, oh, there's the next one. You'll know where the next step is. So you don't have to know how to get from the dry land to the island. If you know there's going to be stepping stones along the way, you just have to know where the next one's going, and just trust that you take that step, the next one will reveal itself. And if you're brave enough, you'll take that step, and the same process. And life unfolds beautifully when you trust it. I can honestly say that. I had no idea this is the life laid out for me.
That's a great answer to that question there, Shane. And I think it's a great example also. What you're saying there is, don't try to go from A to a Z in one go. Take it step by step and embrace a constructive challenge. Step out of your comfort zone and give life your very best shot.
Definitely. Nicely put.
And on that note, I shall bring today's show to an end. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
You're most welcome.